We Catholics in the United States spent many, many years trying to integrate ourselves into our culture, to have society accept us. And I think in the last 30 or 40 years, as we've become more assimilated into the culture, more comfortable, we've slept while the enemy was sowing his seeds. When we look at society today, what is it that distinguishes us from the weeds? Jesus told us in Sunday's gospel, like the wheat and the weeds, as we begin to mature, it becomes easier to separate the good from the bad. So the key is, do we mature? Have we matured in our faith over the years? If we've not matured in our faith, or maybe I should say, if we're not constantly maturing in our faith, how can the angels tell us apart from the weeds? Or maybe to put it another way, if we haven't matured, maybe we're not so much different from the weeds. Now that's a scary thought. And just to show you how mature we are as Christians in our world, I'd like to mention a study done a few years ago by the Barna Foundation that's tied to today's readings. The question was asked of almost 2,000 self-professed Christians, do you believe that Satan is not a living being, but is merely a symbol of evil? 59% agreed that Satan was not real, and another 8% weren't sure what they thought. Strangely enough, a question about the Holy Spirit was pretty much the same. When asked, do you believe the Holy Spirit is a symbol of God's power or presence, but is not a living entity, 58% agreed with that, and 9% weren't sure. Which says, if you didn't catch it, that 1% more people agree that the devil is a living being than agree that the Holy Spirit is. 67% of random self-professed Christians don't believe in Satan or the Holy Spirit. I recently led a funeral service for the mother of a friend who died, and my friend and her siblings weren't really into religion, and there was no mass. But as a part of my little homily during the service, I told a story which in a nutshell made an analogy of the difference between life in the womb and this life, and how in the same way it was hard for us to imagine how different our bodies in the next life will be from our bodies in this life. It caused a few of the people in the room to come to me afterwards and question me about things like, do I really think that we'll have a body in the next life? And didn't Jesus just look like he had a body? They even mentioned reincarnation. And finally, well, I believe in Jesus. Isn't believing in Jesus enough to get me to heaven? And I told them, no, even the devil believes in Jesus. Where is their maturity as Christians? What kind of seeds were planted in them? What kind of soil was prepared in them, as the gospel talked about last week? Satan is planting his seeds of evil and falsehoods as we get comfortable and sleep. That same poll I told you about said that 1/3 of those polled thought that Jesus sinned at some point in his life. The seed sown by the devil in the world would have us believe that we don't really sin, though other people do. And God is just like Barney, the big purple dinosaur, singing, I love you, you love me. You know, the world tells us that the main goal of life is to be happy and feel good about ourselves, and heaven is just a big participation award. Have we bought into any of the lies planted by Satan? Jesus calls us to wake up from sleep and become the mature wheat that he planted. We do that by praying, by bringing Catholic magazines and books into our homes and reading them, or perusing Catholic websites, by participating in ongoing catechetical studies offered by our parish, and by receiving the sacraments. So the question will be at the end of the age, when Jesus sends his angels to separate the wheat from the weeds, What is it about us that distinguishes us from the weeds? Or have we become indistinguishable from the weeds?